Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Welcome to episode 16 of Fire Code Tech with Kelsey Longmoore. Kelsey is a building code and life safety professional with over a decade of experience in code enforcement and more recently experience as a consultant in fire and life safety. I was really interested to speak with Kelsey about how codes and standards work outside of the U.S., more specifically in Canada, where Kelsey has had all of her experience. Kelsey is the co-founder of the Kilo Lima Code Community. Kelsey breaks down the origin story of Kilo Lima Code Community. In the episode, we talk about the different facets of Kilo Lima Code Community and Kelsey's career. We get into the blog posts and also the importance of being able to have forums online for fire and life safety. In addition, Kelsey talks about the new courses that she's launched about the Canadian model codes that can be found at KiloLimaCode.com right now. If you're curious about how model building codes work in Canada and where you can go to learn more about this topic, I think you're going to really like this episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode and follow us on social media. If you would like to talk to me about fire protection or life safety, or if you have an idea for a topic or an interesting guest, you can drop me a line at ggagliardi@firecodetech.com. I wanted to try to give the interview some context and perspective, so I started the recording before we actually got into the interview. Check out the show notes if you want to skip the informal beginning to the podcast and skip straight to the questions. It's interesting for me kind of straddling this line between, of course, I want to get interesting technical information out of people, and we kind of explore these topics that are not as well recorded, or don't have as much online presence, or information online. But then also, I don't want to be just like some very dry interview that is just people are answering and then stopping and waiting for me to, proceed with the next question. And of course, sometimes it is just time to go to the next question. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want it to feel like forced, like people feel trapped, that they have to just answer the question and stick to the question and be done with it, because I think there's a lot of interesting information in between those spaces.
Yeah, no, I can talk a lot and ramble, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm completely the same. I'm more I'm not very formal. I'm formal when I need to be, but a lot of times I just really value the real conversations. So
Well, that's good. I think that in my experience, the ramblers, as long as they also have the ability to hear what you're saying to them, are the best kind of people to have on podcasts.
You just
There's
need to siphon through the
yeah,
information a
there's
bit more, but
there's some people that it seems like there's a fountain erupting out of them, then it's like a torrent of information that just has a will of its own. And that's definitely an interesting type of guest, but it also is it's hard because you're like, I want to. There's kind of a theme here, of course. The theme is you, so you can talk about what you like, but yeah, so it's interesting.
yeah, I'm working on being more concise. My one son is pretty similar, and so we have a book called My Mouth is a Volcano. So I'm working on it with him to to really hone in and get things more concise. It's hard though when you're really excited about something. You just like with Kilo Lima, I just can talk and talk and talk and talk, and so
Yeah, I feel
yeah.
you. I have to meter myself when I speak with other people who ask, and like people will ask you sometimes, like sometimes people will ask you like, "How are you doing?" and they don't really want to hear like the
Yeah.
whole spiel. Sometimes people will also ask how the podcast's going, and I have to tell myself they don't always really want to know like
Yeah.
the deluge of information that's coming for anybody who asks me about it.
Yeah.
And so,
I know
so
I
I
usually,
understand.
yeah, I usually, when I've been meeting with people, to kind of see what they think about Kilo Lima or get them involved, I always start with, do you really only have half an hour? And kind of put it out there before that a lot of times, like a Kelsey 5 minutes isn't really 5 minutes. It tends to go longer. So
I feel that. I feel that.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I'm so excited about having you on. I felt like I feel I don't know if this is strange to say, but like a kindred spirit in what you're doing at Kilo Lima, and so I was just really excited, and I feel like, not that this has any, says anything about me, but I just was really excited because I feel like I found you really early in what you launched, and also you launched Kilo Lima like probably down to like days off of when I started
when
Fire
you
Code
started
Tech.
training, yeah,
So yeah, I felt like I was like, whoa, this is neat that you're entering this kind of publicly open space at the same time that
yeah,
I'm kind of throwing myself into the process as well.
yeah, and it has been a weird time because like thoughts of this were brewing before, and then around that time, like I think it was early April when we finally I finally got it up there. It's when the world started going crazy with the pandemic. So is this really a good time to take on something new? But it's kind of the best time to really realize that you have something you want to do and just go for it. So yeah, and I think I saw, am I episode 23 for you?
So I've recorded like 23
Wow.
episodes. Some episodes due to like audio quality, or maybe like the first couple episodes I recorded, they're practice, and obviously I had getting my reps in with getting guests and just finding my ability to interview people, and understanding the technology that I'm using. So there's a couple duds in there, and some of them I'll be able to salvage, maybe like two or three. But yeah, this is probably pretty close to the 20th full. I could look. I have the folder on this laptop, but yeah, I think you're number 20, and
That's
maybe
amazing.
yeah, it's been awesome. It's been so much fun.
Yeah.
All the people I've gotten to speak with, and I feel like it's been just a huge learning experience for me, and just propelling me forward for my ability to just talk with people, and also my fire protection and life safety knowledge. I've just getting to had the fortune to be able to pick people's brains, so it's been just awesome. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it. I just want to say thanks again for coming on, and I just wanted to get started with talking about a little bit about your origin in life safety and engineering. And yeah, I'd love to hear about how you found your way into fire and life safety, and yeah, a little bit about your background.
Right on. So yes, again, thanks for having me. This is very, very excited. I never would have thought I'd be recording a podcast, but here we are. So I found fire um, protection and life safety probably different than a lot of people in the field. So I went into engineering as any 17, 18-year old, probably not really knowing what it was all about, but I was good at math and science. So um, it's what I started with. I loved kind of the challenge and problem solving side of it. So I kept with it. I actually studied environmental systems engineering. So not like the building code is never what I thought I would end up in. Shortly after graduating, did a bit of traveling and then came back and got on with the city, so the municipality where I lived, in in a roadways position. And then, after a while, it wasn't challenging, and there was an opening in the building branch. At that point, I had probably never really looked at the building code. So it was a pretty steep learning curve once I got there, but I loved it. I loved the challenge of learning the code and reviewing drawings and seeing all the new stuff going on in the city and kind of working with all the groups involved in it. So it was good. So that's kind of how by chance I happened to fall into the building code, and here we are starting a website for building code knowledge. So
That's interesting. That's very interesting. So does that origin in not knowing about the building code and the steep learning curve? Do you think that that played a role into what you're trying to do now for Kilo Lima and that struggle to find your way to that knowledge? Did that play a part?
yeah, so it definitely led me to Kilo Lima. So where I'm from Saskatchewan, so it's kind of in the prairies in the middle of Canada. And as a municipality and a code enforcer there, it was a pretty it was a bit behind there, and a bit the culture was kind of anti-compliance, should I say. So when I started, I was new to it, and I'd be reviewing plans, and a lot of the code requirements I was enforcing just hadn't been enforced or done.
I understand what you're saying too about, code enforcement and how it's a struggle because you get into these situations in which, there's a lot of pressures from the different people and different stakeholders for, code enforcers. It's not just, hey, enforce this to the letter of the law and you're done. And so I think that's really interesting. I'd love to keep hearing you describe that a little bit.
So Kilo Lima, so I like from Saskatchewan, and as I was learning the code, actually I had started not really knowing anything about the building code, and then within 9 months, I had written my building officials exams, and there were some changes in the branch, and I was the lead and only actually plan reviewer for for kind of complex buildings there. And so it was really challenging. There was kind of this perception that, I was the expert when really I had just learned. But like in Canada, there seems to be a lot of code consultants and knowledge kind of in the Toronto area. There's a lot of firms, and then again in Vancouver and surrounding areas. So when I had started is an AHJ in Saskatchewan, I didn't even know that code consulting was a thing. Not a lot of the projects I worked on there had someone specifically doing the code review. And so, yeah, really, it was a struggle to find good information on building code, to know where to find it, to just have conversations. Like I had some contacts in other cities in Saskatchewan, or kind of the province building standards there, but it wasn't an easy process. And now being where I am, knowing that there is a lot of companies, there is some resources tucked away on the internet. Like, if I knew then what I knew now of what was available, things would have gone so much more smoothly. And I don't want that to I don't want that to be a struggle for anyone else, because it shouldn't be. The building code, it's minimum requirements, and it should be a lot easier to have these conversations and find good information. So, yeah, I guess my background with the municipality is definitely the main reason for Kilo Lima.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I agree 100%. I worked for a fire suppression contractor right out of college. And, I was working in the middle of the United States on small, like very small jobs to medium-sized jobs, like not huge jobs. And so, if you're working in middle America and you're working in small jurisdictions and you are, a lot of times these jobs don't have the budget to have dedicated life safety or fire protection consulting or engineering. So you may not even see uh, dedicated construction documents that are, designed to these fire protection and life safety sheets in the set. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, how I could see how you could spend a significant portion of your career and, not deal with one of these monolithic jobs that, absolutely needs a dedicated fire protection and life safety engineer. And so how that could, just that it not having that exposure could limit the knowledge of what even the scope of the role is. Because, yeah, like I said, there would be times where there would be maybe a couple fire protection notes on a drawing, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be all I would see, and maybe some of it was wrong. And so, yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I resonate with that for sure about not having the information and not not knowing it's. And you mentioned some places in Canada, and I loved hearing that, because for me it's like I'm thinking of course Oklahoma is not a Boston or a New York City or a Los Angeles or Chicago. We're not these. It's not the same. Of course, in these big towns, it's a different way to do business. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, I guess, and because I worked as a building, we call them building officials in Saskatchewan, but I've just seen like all these smaller jurisdictions and municipalities, like they're all having the same challenges of, getting education for their building officials, keeping them up to date, putting processes in place to make sure they have a good plan review process. And all these jurisdictions are just struggling with the same things. And to me, it's just like there has to be a better way. It's a national code. Like, how do we get things in place so that, it's not so hard for the municipality to enforce. It's not so hard for, designers to get the building code knowledge they need to design safe buildings. Like it's the end goal is safe buildings. So it's how do we make the entire process easier for everyone? Um,
That's a wonderful point. That's a wonderful point. I love how you articulated that. Yeah, the end goal is safe buildings. How do we grease the wheels for everybody involved? For
mhm.
contractors, for authorities having jurisdiction, for consultants, how do we level the playing field and make this a more approachable process to end up at safer buildings? So, yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree with you. So, yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned some of your certifications and or just some of your exams you've sat for. I always love to ask people when they come on the show that they have a certification exam that maybe I'm aware of, but not exactly sure of what it is. I like to ask people to tell me about their certifications, because I'm endlessly fascinated by qualifications and professional certifications. I'm sure that's not a cool thing to say, but there it is.
I mean, different strokes for different folks. So I guess I mentioned my building officials license. So it's called something different across different provinces. But so essentially our Canadian code is broken up into parts. Um, there's kind of a smaller, simpler part for um, smaller buildings or certain occupancies, and then what we call part three for more complex buildings, specific occupancies that need more professional design. So the exams are based on, there's kind of three different classes of exams, and then so once you get your class three license, you can review and inspect all buildings in the code. So I worked through the various exams for that. When I was with the city to be able to um, be a building official and work on behalf of the city for that. So that's what the building officials exams are all about. They're based on the building code, obviously. And then my more recent designation I got, it's called a certified professional. So in British Columbia here, we have the certified professional program. And so I guess it's an alternative to the conventional building permit process. So it's an optional way of doing the building permit application. And it's adopted in some jurisdictions in the province. So it's actually been in the city of Vancouver since the 80s. And most major projects in the city of Vancouver now will go through this process. So the company I work with, I'm not in Vancouver, I'm more in interior BC, but a lot of our work is through this program. So essentially what it is, it's a course, a lot of work, and then 2 full-day exams to be able to practice as a certified professional. But with that designation, you're essentially a representative of the city. So you're involved in projects right from the beginning, and you're doing kind of the city, like the full city review for the building code throughout the process. And then the benefit of that is that permits can go through a lot faster because the city, it's this level of trust where the city knows you have the knowledge to be able to do that review and make sure that happens. And so there's a lot less oversight from the building department at the city throughout that. So I'm pretty excited about having passed that. It was pretty tough and got a bit pushed back because of COVID, but finished that up, I guess, a month and a half ago now. So
Wow, that's interesting. That sounds like a pretty useful certification if you can, bypass certain points of permit application or basically streamline certain instances of the permitting process. Yeah, I don't. It sounds interesting. I don't think I fully understand like how. So for a second, I was thinking that you guys were somehow an arm of the city or something of that nature. But yeah, I don't think I fully understand that. But that sounds really really fascinating.
yeah, it's essentially just if you have, if a project has a certified professional, it's just because everywhere is different. Back when I was in Saskatchewan, a permit a permit review time of 2 months was atrocious, and industry was not happy about it. Whereas in Vancouver, like, it's months and months to go through kind of the building review process. Whereas when you have this certified professional, like, we're saying that we're bringing these permit drawings into the city and they are code compliant. So because of that, there's a lot less oversight by the city and things go a lot quicker. So it is kind of like an arm of the city, like we're separate, but we're really representing them and acting on behalf of them for the building code compliance. So
I liked hearing you speak a little bit about how the codes and standards or the model building codes work in Canada. I One of the things that I have such trouble finding information about, I feel like it should be pretty straightforward, right? I feel like it should be easy Google to say, how does the model building codes work in Canada? But a quick review of what you can initially find on the internet proves that that's not a very easy thing to do. Even if you go read some articles in scholarly journals, you probably still don't know how to you design a building or perform a life safety or code review for Canada. So yeah, I would love to hear about how the model building codes in Canada work, and how codes and standards work in Canada. As a code nerd, I would love to hear about how does this process work in other countries, because I feel like it was so hard to learn how it works in the U.S., and I feel like there's an abundance of, or not. I don't know if I'd say abundance, but just there's a lot of people and there's a fair amount of resources. But yeah,
yeah, so in Canada, I guess we have there's 5 national model codes. So there's the building code, fire code, plumbing code, the energy code, the Farm Building Code, which has some relaxations for farm buildings. But essentially, it's committees who kind of work on changes to the codes from across Canada, and they develop and then national codes are published every 5 years now is the intent. And then so there's a national code, but a jurisdiction has to adopt it. So what'll happen is that each province either adopts the national building code with some amendments. So in Saskatchewan, we worked off of the national building code and a couple pages of amendments that were, kind of address the regional needs. And then other provinces will kind of take the national code and make a lot more changes to it and additions to suit their needs. And then they're actually published as provincial codes. So when I worked in Saskatchewan, I worked off of the national code with a few amendments. And now here in British Columbia, we have our own British Columbia building code. So it's the last iteration to the provincial code is very similar to the national code. And I think actually a lot of the provinces are working towards more streamlining that. So it isn't, there isn't so much difference from province to province. And then the other weird thing is that the city of Vancouver, they have their own code. So they don't use the British Columbia building code. They have the Vancouver building bylaw, which they take the code, but then also kind of their city bylaw requirements, and they publish their own specific building code. So there's a national code, and then each province kind of takes it and changes what they need to, and then it's adopted as a province other than Vancouver, which has its own city code. So does that answer it?
Yeah, definitely. And so,
Okay.
I mean, intuitive, that all makes, great sense. And intuitively, that all makes complete sense. And, in the US, it's much the same with, the International Building Code. Everybody adopts some version, whether that's 2015, 2013. And then there's regional amendments or
Mm-hmm.
different statutes that are appended to these model building codes. And then, like you mentioned at the end, of course, there are exceptional cases in large cities like Boston or I don't know why I said Boston, but Chicago definitely, New York and California all have like their own version of the building
Mm-hmm.
code. Like it's the California building code. It's not the international building code, and there are definitely a lot of differences for some of these big, larger population
Mm-hmm.
cities or states. But yeah, that's interesting. So I wanted to ask. So does the model building codes for Canada, do they use NFPA 13, or how do you guys establish sprinkler criteria or fire alarm criteria?
Yeah, they do. The sprinklers, we use NFPA 13 or RRG, depending on the building, for sprinklers. NFPA 14 for standpipes. But for our alarm standards are Canadian standards. So
Oh.
what is it, 72? Is that the...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we don't use 72. It's some ULCS, I don't know. Cut that out because I'd have to go back and
No,
check the
that's
specific
fine.
standard. But
No,
yeah, we have Canadian standards for
interesting.
our alarm
Yeah,
design and verification, and yeah.
yeah, that's cool. I like to hear that. I'm sure some technologist out there would have been shaking his phone and screaming if I
Oh yeah,
wouldn't have put out that
I gave
question for that. How do we know what to do for the sprinklers or fire alarms? So cool. So I just wanted to touch a little bit more about, you talked about your role as a authority having jurisdiction a lot. I just wanted to um, get a little bit more information about your role now at Celerity and kind of what your role is and what you're doing now to give people a picture of your experience.
Yeah, so I've been a co-consultant with Celerity for about a year now. So typically I typically work with architects and engineers on working through their building code review throughout their design. So, focusing on the nitty-gritty details so that they don't have to know all the specifics of the code and they can focus more on their design. So we'll work with them and do kind of reviews like I would do at the city, but kind of in a more helpful way than a city has time for, and from the beginning. So really when they get to their permit application or time to submit to the city, they don't have the big surprises of a code, something in the code they miss that really affects their design. So um, that's what I'm doing now. I love my Celerity team, but I've actually decided to take a big step back, starting right in it way actually to really focus on Kilo Lima. So I'm still supporting them a bit, but there's so much potential and opportunity with what my dreams are for Kilo Lima. So, and it's been hard to do it on the side. So I'm just taking a risk and jumping into it. So, I'm kind of weaning out my code consulting role and focusing more on Kilo Lima here.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's really incredible that you're, taking the bold step into, full commitment into being a entrepreneur. And man, that's awesome. I'm so excited for you. I know that you just got started with it, but I think you're making the right decision. And not that you asked for my opinion, but
Well, thank you.
I think that you're making the right decision, and I'm glad that you're, doubling down on your investment and your belief in what you're doing is the right thing and something you believe in. So yeah, I'm super
Yeah.
excited to hear about that. That's cool.
Yeah, it
And
is. It's a time. It's really, it's a good time for me to try it. We moved actually just this January. So we were in Saskatchewan and moved to British Columbia. So we sold our house, and right now, while we're kind of settling in, we're just renting. So um it might not be the best financial decision to 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 step away from a paid job for one that's not paid yet, but it's just this is kind of the only time that I don't have a mortgage to focus on. I mean, rent obviously, but it's we just kind of have that safety net right now, and to me it's I'm so passionate about it right now that um I'm just going for it.
yeah, so for the people who haven't already paused this and Googled it yet, or Googled it while they're listening,
Where's
wh-
Saskatchewan is?
no,
Oh.
what? That's funny. I like that you went there. Where Saskatchewan is? No, I was gonna say, what is Kilo Lima Code Community? And tell the listeners about
Okay.
what it is and what you're doing, and yeah,
um
where you want to go with it.
Okay, so it's a lot of things. It's kind of it's my brainchild kind of put into a website. So, I could kind of break it down into four main parts. The blog, the forum, what I call the wiki, and then the school. So the blog is it's made up of um different different code users across different disciplines in the country, and we put out weekly blogs. So, I always thought I love to talk and I love the building code, and I thought it'd be great to run a building code blog. Um, and I quickly realized that I can talk at phenomenal speeds, but getting those ideas down onto paper into a concise way is not my strong suit. So yeah, I got a group of people together and we do weekly blogs, and they range from kind of general code information to technical posts on specific items, and they're really meant to be kind of thought provoking and helpful conversation starters, and really just people don't know what they don't know. So one of our recent articles was on kind of a new standard the national codes that's required, where I know from experience a lot of, it's not being enforced because the jurisdictional knowledge isn't there and the industry knowledge isn't there. So really just get information out in kind of a quick read format. So we've had the blog going for 5 months now, which is crazy. And it's starting to gain some traction. We actually had big news at Kilo Lima was NFPA actually tweeted one of our articles on podcasts last week, I think, or a couple weeks ago, which was super cool. So the blog is made up of different contributors across the country. The other thing we have right now on the site with Kilo Lima is the forum. So we've titled it Good Questions, because to me there's just so many questions. So the forum, which on the site we call Good Questions, I take questions submitted to the site or ones I've had myself and I post them, and it's really a platform for these items where things are a bit gray or there's various different interpretations, or it's not quite worded good, that what does that really mean, and a place online for people to really have those conversations and see how other people are applying it. So we do have some users. I can see from the site people are going to it, but we don't quite have an engaged audience yet. For that, I think, it's kind of the fear of answering something wrong or, asking a silly question. So I'm really trying to break that down with that part of the site and just really start having these code chats across different companies and different user groups. So that's the forum part of it.
Yeah. No, it does. And that's all great. And I totally agree that, there's so many parts of the code that's ambiguous, and it's just you get into spots that are, there's an infinite amount of ways to construct a building. So there's
Mm-hmm.
just so many different little nooks and crannies of the building code that, you can't. And I always tell a story of how thankful I am for online forums and discussion boards, because I can't tell you how many times I've spent hours trying to find something in the code or trying to find a specific use case for some piece of fire protection or life safety technology, and just toiled over it for half a day. And then, I'll find some obscure forum from 2007 and
Mm-hmm.
where a guy will describe the exact thing that I'm looking for. I had this one project I was working on, and the interior designer wanted to use a specific open grid type ceiling, and they wanted to know, is that a obstruction to the sprinkler's discharge? And so I was, it wasn't, they didn't use the term open grid ceiling, but it was this baffle sort of thing. Anyways, all this to say, strange ceiling, strange use case.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being some forum from 2007 helps me out and gets me out of a bind and tells me, no, it's not an obstruction if you follow these construction guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's a great value in these places for the community to band together and to share resources and to, answer these questions that are just burying people, and making it not able to provide, safe buildings.
Mm-hmm. And I know from working with the municipality, to being a co-consultant now, like these conversations happen in pockets like multiple times a day everywhere. And so it's crazy to me that, there isn't something. I mean, there is, certain building officials associations will have maybe a forum or a big long email chain, but there's nothing right now set up kind of nationally to have these conversations. So that's what I'm trying to build there, and really linking it to you can do great things with the website now where you tag it to specific code articles, so it's in the future if someone is kind of looking at that, not sure how to read it, they can come to Kilo Lima and click the code article and it'll pull up if, there's ever been a conversation about that or what other people think. So it's, there's, it's just, it's slowly getting started, that part of it, but it's going to be a really awesome tool once we build our engagement there and people start contributing and getting involved. So it's going to be pretty awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, and I forgot to mention, I appreciate I was super excited for you guys too when I saw NFPA share the post.
Yeah.
I was, as far as fire protection goes, I think it's like NFPA and SFPE are pretty much the two biggest associations in fire protection or fire and life safety that I'm aware of. So I was pretty excited about that post, and also pretty excited that Fire Code Tech was on the podcast post from Jim Burns.
Yeah,
Uh,
Jim.
I think I can't remember if I think Jim invited me first on LinkedIn or something, and maybe he's how I found you. I forget, he had liked something or was engaged with something, and then I think I was looking at his profile, and then I found you, and I was like, whoa, here's this Kilo Lima thing, and I think you had like less than 30 followers on Kilo Lima, and I was like, man, I'm getting in at the ground floor of this,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that was
Jim.
super
Oh,
exciting.
I was so happy that was tweeted. Yeah, so Jim wrote that podcast article. So he's I worked with Jim at back in Saskatchewan, and he's a fire inspector, but also a building code guru. And he, it was really him who at the beginnings, like we had kind of talked about a blog, and so he's been really our number one supporter. So I couldn't be happier that, he wrote that article and NFPA tweeted it. And yeah, so he's been spreading the word. He'll go to sites and kind of put in, leave a comment or ask a question and just let people know about Kilo Lima. So he's great.
That's awesome. So
Mhm.
for people out there who, or maybe for my interest and for other people's interest also, so how do you find these great professionals that are involved with Kilo Lima? And then also as a secondary question to that, if people want to get involved and write an article for Kilo Lima, how do they find you? How do they reach out and talk to you about it?
Yeah, a lot of the current contributors are people who I have, worked with personally or work with now. And then, a couple are, I guess one main one, Jerry with Code Next. Early when I was starting this, I was, we're heavily, I'm the most western province and Saskatchewan's in the middle. And so I really needed some Eastern input. And from my Google search of code consulting companies in Toronto, CodeNext really stood out at me. They seemed to really kind of value the same things, and they had this cute little video on their website about how to work with them. I shouldn't say cute. Interesting little video on their website of how to work with them, but they seem very Jerry probably wouldn't like the word cute. They just seemed very, very approachable. So I reached out to Code Next. And this was early. This was probably back in like March. And I didn't even have a website then. I just had all these crazy ideas in my head, and I rambled for probably like an hour about my vision and what I think it could be. And by the end of that meeting, he was in and super supportive and saw the value in it. So and then from there, he recommended someone from another company out east too, who joined the team as well. One of our newest villagers who hasn't done any, and also I don't know if I mentioned I called them villagers because it takes a village to run a blog. But he is an architect who just inquired through the site and loved the vision of knowledge sharing. So if people are interested, it's actually one of our drop down options on our contact us page is that, I think I've got what it takes to be a villager, or I want to share a guest post, because we're very open to that. That's what we want. We think that, everyone has a unique perspective, and they have their niche and what they know a lot about. And we want to be kind of a hub and a platform to really get that information out, because it's hard if you're very specific about what you know. You don't, it's hard to write a blog for one specific thing. But at Kilo Lima, we want to kind of find those gems and share them with everybody. So we find contributors in various ways. I'm not shy about just reaching out to people if to tell them about Kilo Lima. So that's been a lot of it, just kind of reaching out. Sometimes people say, no, I'm too busy, but sometimes they get it and they want to be a part of it. So
That's fascinating. Yeah, I see a lot of similarities, and that fire code tech has been a similar scenario for me. And people, fire protection is very tight knit, and people understand. If you are trying to do something good for the community, and generally, if you reach out and explain to people, what you're trying to do, and it is a positive force for fire protection, life safety, they get it, and people are excited to be involved.
mhm.
So very cool. Well, yeah, I just wanted to. So, what do you see as the future of Kilo Lima, or where do you want to go next? I know you've talked to me before about that you'd like to put on some classes or develop the community in that way.
Yeah. So that's something we're launching in September here. So I'm personally working. I guess my expertise is the the code, like the code requirements. So I'm putting together an online course for what it's called, part 3 of the building code. So it's part 3 is kind of focused on the fire protection, life safety, and accessibility is lumped in their requirements. And so putting that together and just breaking it down in digestible pieces that people can work through at their own pace, and provide cheat sheets, and kind of the way that I think a lot of people like to learn. Right now, I mean, when I took my first part 3 course, it was when it strolled into town once a year, and it was, I had to be available those 5 full days, and it was 8-hour days of learning. And it's hard to take in all that information and really understand it in that type of setting. And I mean, now with COVID, it's kind of, I think, the way a lot of education is moving, to be a lot more flexible. So I'm working on some courses for general code information, and then we have another company involved right now who is putting together more specific courses on certain items that are related to the code. So I guess the goal of the as I mentioned, the one part of Kilolima is the school. So the goal is to be a hub um, for building code and building code related courses by different contributors. So just finding people specific knowledge and hosting a course for them. So when I took the certified professional course recently, one of the sections was on elevators. So there was this passionate individual who spoke for like an hour and a half on the building code requirements of elevators, the elevator code requirements, the electrical code, and it was just engaging. And those are the kind of people who, they know their stuff. They like to teach, and he shouldn't just be available to that one course. Like that knowledge needs to be spread to everyone who will listen. So really finding people who want to share their knowledge, and having, hosting a school really, for all code courses. So that's what we're up to right now.
Cool. Well,
Mhm.
that's so fascinating. I know that you're gonna do good things, and that people are gonna catch to this idea. I think it's absolutely something that's worth doing. So I'm happy that you're doing it. But yeah, I wanted to get into just one or two professional development topics to um, in the interview in traditional fire code tech fashion. But yeah, I'm sure since you are steeped in fire protection and life safety topics, and you're part of a community that writes posts about what's trending in the industry, you have some thoughts on what a trend in the industry is right now, in your opinion.
I think a trend that I'm seeing a lot is just more available education and resources. Since I started this, Kilo Lima, it's really opened me up to seeing and finding people who are trying to do a lot of the same stuff, and kind of shifting more work online and getting that education and resources out there and really trying to build, like here, I guess there just really isn't that building code community and knowledge sharing right now, but I think it's something that people want and people are open to. So
I think that COVID has been it's just poured gasoline on the fire that is, people being able to provide resources online. I've seen more webinars than I've ever seen before in
mhm.
my life. There's been a couple people starting blogs or online content, more new podcasts than ever. I mean, it's kind of exploding right now. I feel like we're at a point at which we're seeing, you know, us trying to catch up to technology and other industries that are more well developed. And I completely agree with you, and I also resonate with the thought of, like, the more you get into this space of trying to find resources and trying to promote people who are developing good content, you see that just how much is out there, and it just kind of opens your eyes to this. And I don't know, I remember I've said so many times before I started Fire Code Tech, there's not enough resources. There's not enough resources. There's nobody out there doing it. And then, like, the more I am involved with Fire Code Tech and the more that I look, the more that I just see that if you can just scour the internet and just, look for all these people and everything, there's more out there than you would think. But yeah, I think it just needs a better light on it.
On that is that another thing we have planned in Kilolima in the future is really, kind of like, I call it the future wiki. So right now on our site, like, and it's slow going, but we have a resources page where we do try to put the stuff that we have found online that is really great, and we want to tell people about. So I guess eventually what I dream of, is a type of kind of database and tools where it's, all these gems from online can be found easily. It's like, you put in your code article or whatever subject you want, and then it's like bam bam bam, here's all the great things that we've like filtered from the internet and made it easy for people to find, because there is good stuff out there. It's just, it takes a lot of time to dig for it, and it just doesn't make sense to me for every, we're all using the same code. It doesn't make sense for, different people everywhere to be spending that time scouring the internet. Like, let's come together and make something that just makes it easier for everybody. So, and it's, yeah, so I was actually working remotely, with my company since September. So and it takes a groove to get into, but by the time COVID hit, that kind of wasn't a change for us. But even before the COVID, I just really realized how important it is to be able to share information, online and more digitally, and meet like that. So, yeah, it's very interesting how, I think things are just really going to explode, and just there's going to be a lot of good innovation, and making things better, because people, not by choice, but it's the way we just really have to move ahead now. So
Definitely. No, I 100% agree. And yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that there's a lot of promising innovation and just a development of resources in store for the field. So I'm excited about it.
Mhm.
Well, anyways, Kelsey, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and I want to stay in touch and keep checking up on Kilo Lima, and I'll be sure to put a link to the website in the show notes. If you and also if you just Google Kilo Kilo Lima Lima Code Community, it'll come up, I'm sure. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope we can do it again one day.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been it's been great and very excited. And yeah, thank you so much for seeing kind of the value in what we're doing and hosting us. It's pretty exciting. So
It is exciting.
hmm.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.